I grew up in Denver Harbor.
How about your family? What was your family like? Any siblings?
Oh yeah, I have two brothers and I had three sisters, but I lost a sister about 3 years ago to cancer. Yeah, breast cancer.
How was your childhood?
It was wild, man. It was no stability, a lot of fighting in the home. My dad drank heavily. He was a heavy drinker for a long time, and him and my mom just fought like cats and dogs, man. They I don't remember any, maybe once or two or three times where they were okay, but most of the time we were running from him, going to neighbors' houses, running to my grandmother's because the violence and he because of his drinking he really put us through a lot, man, a lot of hell, and we lived in fear, because even while we did try to do things like outings. With family outings, he'd get intoxicated, and the way home he was driving like a madman. Racing trains at one time I remember, and there's another time we were coming from Pasadena, and we had a wreck. We banged up. Back then we didn't wear seatbelts, so it was like everybody was all over the car, and he gets out like what happened. Like he didn't know, understand what was going on. Then he asked if we were okay, and we were kind of shaken up, but no major injuries. But pretty much, uh, it wasn't something pretty. I don't remember. I don't have a lot of good memories of home. And then my parents divorced. Early on. Well, they separated, and then I kind of bounced back and forth with my dad a while, then lived with my mom. Then I went with my grandmother. She finally adopted me because I was in trouble with the law. And I stayed with her for probably until around 18 years old. But I was still, by then I was already drinking and using drugs, and she wrestled with me, tried to get me, to live, the normal life, and that was something I didn't know. So what normal was, I couldn't do it. I wasn't really, looking at her and my grandfather, and to get normal, it was kind of like a boring thing because they didn't drink and they didn't smoke. So I was like, well, I don't want to live that kind of life. I was already used to, hanging out in the streets by that age, and I was heavily into drugs and alcohol.
Did you have any type of abuse that you dealt with?
The only abuse was his behavior. It scared the hell out of us because we were never, uh, we never knew when he got home how he was gonna act. What he was gonna do. Some days he would talk okay, but most of the time, him and my mom were fighting, always fighting. So we were at that young age, 8, 9, 7, 10 years old. We would all just huddle up in a room and listen to the glasses breaking and stuff falling and the beating and the cussing and the threats, and it was crazy, man. It was like someplace a child couldn't function normal because you weren't exposed to it. And at that time I was like, man, this is a horrible place to be, and I felt real bad because for my siblings because they were smaller, and but I couldn't do nothing because I knew that I couldn't lash out at him because for some reason they instilled in me you couldn't do any hit your parents, so that kind of stuck, that part, and I never try to defend my mom, because I said, well, how do I do this, so it was like hell, I had to just swallow it and listen to it all, and that really impacted me, negative because I was stuck between the two of them, you know, and then kind of trying to keep the respect. And back then we didn't have a phone, so I couldn't call anybody, so it was like I was just stuck there.
So, um, how old were you whenever you left home?
When I left home, I was probably 13 years old, and I ran the streets, and I got in and out of trouble. I started, using a lot of drugs, cocaine, and marijuana. I shot up so many, all kind of pills. I couldn't even tell you what types they were, but if you could put it in a spoon and heat it up and put in a syringe, I shot it in my arms, because I was miserable. I was trying to medicate and, numb myself from all of the memories of, what I went through. And I was kidnapped, so, I was sexually abused, and that was really the reason that I turned to drugs real heavy, because the divorce and the fighting was one thing, but when that happened, I just lost it, and I buried myself in intoxication and living wild, and I lived that way for 4.5 decades, man.
So, if you don't mind me asking, I mean, how does the kidnapping, I mean, what happened there?
Well, what happened was is somebody broke in our house, and I was living with my mom, and they came and they said, "We're taking your son," and they had a knife, had put a knife to my throat, and my mom, she was a small woman, she couldn't fight him. So there I am, being dragged out of my home in the middle of the night, man, after from being woken out of my sleep. And he takes me and he says, "You're gonna come with me. I got something for you." And I'm like, "What? What did I do? Why are you doing this?" And he never told me. He never, he didn't talk a lot, but he took me to a railroad yard, and then that's when he began to tell me, he wanted to do, and I was like, "Damn, I don't know what to do. What am I gonna run to?" He's a bigger dude than me, so I just, he did what he wanted to do, and then he kept me for 3 days, and we just roamed around Houston from the north side. Then we ended up back in this area right here on Canal Street, and then finally we ended up back in Denver Harbor, where I live, in that neighborhood where I was living at the time. And he let me go. He just said, "Man, you can go, man." And I'm like, wow. I was afraid, because he never let go of the knife, and he had it in his back, the back of his pants, always letting me know that it was there. And so I'm like, really, I can go? And I thought he was trying to get me to run so he could do something. And I kind of just walked away scared, and I finally got home, and I didn't tell anybody what happened, and I never spoke about it. It was years before I even began to. I think, but the first time I got married, I told my first wife, and she kind of like laughed and made fun of me. So I never opened up about that again, man. But that was I guess the main reason why I turned to the drugs and alcohol, and I did that on a daily basis, man, because it was just too hard. It was tough for me to cope, to live, and to accept, and the fear of what people thought. Sometimes when things happen to you, and you believe that people are aware of it, and you kind of try to hide it, and that's what I did, man, because I was ashamed, and I felt all kind of resentment and hatred, towards my mother, my family, because of these people were supposed to protect me. And here I am, going through this experience, and nobody there. So I turned to alcohol and drugs, and because of the way I felt, I turned to living. I slept with every woman that I could, to prove to myself that I was a man, and that was not any good, because I hurt a lot of people, and it was just a horrible experience that I don't wish that on nobody. Yeah.
When you were out doing drugs and everything, I mean, how were you surviving? What were you doing for money?
I was stealing, man. I'd rob people, rob stores, breaking cars, I'd the railroad was near the neighborhood I grew up in, so we'd get in the railroad cars and, and rob them things and take items. And we took medicines and car parts, electronics, and back then, you know, it wasn't like today, but there was stereo equipment, and sold that stuff, you know. Broke in people's cars and stole, you know, trucks and stuff, and stole whatever we could get. And back then there was amplifiers and boosters and speakers, and we'd take all that and sell it on the street or trade it for drugs. And that's how I lived, because I didn't work, and you know, I couldn't go home and ask for money. You know, by that time, my family they were not gonna support anything that I was doing, because I roamed the streets, you know, and I came home whenever I got ready, you know, after a week, a month, or whatever from being gone. Uh, it was like, you know, I was some wild kid, man, with no direction, no supervision, and really I felt like nobody cared, and so I just did me, and it was a hard, rough life. It was hard. It was tough, because, you know, I would watch people go home, you know, and I stayed in garages or in empty, vacant lots. You know, I remember what time that I had a bag of clothes, and that's all I had. And I would run. I would tell the people, "Hey, I'm going home. Go change," you know, because I'd been in the same clothes for 3 or 4 days, you know, a week. And I didn't really go home. I would go to these empty lots, and I had my clothes, and I'd go change in the lot and go back and keep on going, you know. And it was tough. Yeah.
Um, do you have any kids yourself?
Oh yeah, I have 2 daughters and a son. Yeah. Yeah. During that time, I've been married 5 times, and couldn't keep a marriage together because of my addiction. You know, I drank, and at the first marriage, I was abusive, physical, verbal, and everything. You know, I mean, when I got married, the wedding night, I left, and I didn't come home for 3 days, man. You know, I was out there in the dope house, you know, doing my thing. And back then, I was shooting up a lot, and I was, you know, coked out for the entire time, and drinking. I've always drank, so that was like my DOC. But then, you know, I used a number of drugs just to put on top of whatever I was doing, and whatever was available, because you know, I hung out with crowds where there was drugs available all the time. You know, there were people that sold it, people that, you know, bought it and used it, and we would hang out in different homes where they would, you know, let us come in and do our thing for days. You know, I mean, I spent weeks in the same garage, you know, and nobody. Well, they would leave, certain people, but I stayed there. Well, I didn't have nowhere to go, and they had a bed in there, so I'd sleep in there, you know, sometimes, you know. But that's how I did it, you know. Just
And do you see your kids? Do you talk to your kids?
my oldest daughter has always been around. The the middle one, to the day, I've never had a conversation with her. Her mama moved away to Utah, and I never got a chance to see her growing up. I don't even know if she knows I'm alive. You know, I don't know the stories I heard that they told her. Her mother, one of her best friends that lives here in Houston, told me that she had told my daughter that I was dead. So, you know, I found her on Facebook, but I was afraid to make communication because of the idea that, you know, I was dead to her. So I didn't know, I didn't want to open up something that, you know, would turn out ugly for her, and between her mom. And my son, I see him every now and then. He's with his mom, and as a matter of fact, when I graduated here, I got to see him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He came.
You know, he didn't come here, but when I went to my family's home to stay, they showed up. Well, I invited them, and they made it. They came out, which that was a surprise for me, because this woman, you know, I think I've spent maybe 3 birthdays with him, and and he's gonna be 14 this month. Yeah.
Um, so how did you end up coming to the mission?
I ended up coming here through the court. I was mandated through the court. And what it was, I got a DWI back in 2016, and I was on probation. And I was doing pretty good. I went through some aftercare classes downtown, and I was almost at the point of graduating. And I ran into an old friend, and we started getting high. So I stopped reporting, and I had an alcohol monitor that the court, you know, that was part of the stipulations that I had to have a monitor. And I let the monitor go off. I quit answering phone calls. I quit reporting, and I ran for about 5 months. And in those 5 months, I was using heavy again. I started really smoking. I started smoking crack. I had smoked crack the whole time, though. I've been smoking crack for about 28 years. And during those 5 months, it's like I just went crazy, man. I started doing it every moment, every opportunity. I was doing it, and I was working, and all my money was going on dope, man. Every payday, I'd spend 3 or 4 days in a crack house and smoke it all up. Stay there until the money was gone, and then take an Uber home and take a couple of days break, and then go back to work. I had a job that they knew my addiction, and as a matter of fact, my sister and her son run the business, and she's been in business for 40 years, so they kind of catered to me. If I worked a month, they let me. If I took a month off, they let me, and they come as soon as I come back. I could go to work, so I always had money to do that in the last 5 years. But I was getting calls from probation department that I needed to come in, and I didn't go in. And so they sent me a letter. They said they had to do something. They needed me to fill out a paper. And I already was tired, I was getting tired, man, because, I've been doing this for a long time. And I thought, hey, I'm not going to go out like this. I know I wasn't put on the earth to die a junkie, man, because my oldest daughter was calling me a crackhead. She was embarrassed. She said, I don't want to even see you or my kids to know you because, all you do is smoke crack. That's all you've been doing. That's all your life. So when I put all those ideas and them thoughts, I'm going about it, thinking, and I've been running, and I said, I'm going to go to prison. I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and give up. I'm going to go ahead and give up and go with the process. And so I went downtown, and they arrested me. And they sent me to a recovery overnight place, to like a detox. And they said, we're going to send you to Open Door Mission. We're not sending you to prison. The judge wants you to go to jail for the entire time of your sentence, which was like 10 years. And I was already set in my mind that I was going to go to prison. But when they kept pushing the idea of ODM, I said, well, whatever, okay, whatever y'all want to do, y'all do it. I'm tired. I'm thinking this to myself. And so they set it up. I came to the gates out there, and I met Stan. And my idea when I got here is I'm going to do my little time and get out and go back to what I was doing. I didn't have no intentions for real change. Although I was tired, I didn't like the idea that I was going to be locked up. And that's what I looked at it like, they're going to lock you up. You're going to do a little time and you'll be out. Then you got to find your way. And, hopefully, I can get some dry time and recover, I hadn't been sleeping right, eating right. And when I got here, started doing classes. They do a lot of AA talks and meetings. And one of the guys here, the facilitator, Jerome, he does his little classes, and they talk about, God, a lot of God, man. And, I was not a stranger to his, the name of Jesus and God. And so I started thinking, okay, if he's if he's as real as these people make him sound, because I've heard it and I talked to him before myself, and it seemed like he never heard me, man. And I was a little angry with God. I had a lot of anger because of, what happened to me as a child, and then, growing up in the household I grew up in, it was a wreck, man. So I thought God was a joke, man, because he could let me go through so much and just stand there and watch. And I'm like, wow, this God, and then, in the classes they said he's a loving God, he's a forgiving God, and he'll help you, he'll change you, he'll turn your life around. And I'm like, man, do these guys know how many times I've heard this? And there's like a crock of, it's some BS, man, more BS. But I started talking to God, and I started praying. I said, you know what? I've never gave him the opportunity to show me what he could do. So listening to the testimonies from men who had gone through the program, who are involved in AA and Celebrate Recovery and Smart Recovery, I started hearing the same piece of information, that if you work the steps, that you'll see some change. That if you follow these suggestions and these principles, that your life will never be the same. And I heard that in church, and I tried it, to from the best of my ability, from what I could, try to get away with. I guess I was trying to make God a genie or something, let him change my world, but I wanted to hold on to my old lifestyle. And here I understood that you got to let go of everything. And I said, okay, I'm going to let go, God. And I'm going to let you do what you say you can do. Because I'm hearing these guys repeat the same thing over. And if you did it for them, who am I? Why am I so different that you can't do it for me? And sorry, man. So I started just going with the program. Started doing everything I had to do. I got caught up when I first got here. They did a locker search, and I had a Coke and some candy in my locker. So they wrote me up. They made a report to my probation officer, and I was a little upset. But I had to realize that it was me that was doing the wrong, not them. They're just doing their job. They're trying to help me to get on the right path. So I said, how can I stop this? And what I thought is, just don't break the rules, man. Follow the rules, David. You've never followed rules. That's why you've lost so much. You've been through so much, because you always had your idea and your way, and it never worked. So I said, you know what, I'm going to do this. I never brought a thing back upstairs or any of the lockers that I lived in. And I stayed out of trouble, And I started working in the kitchen. And my idea of the work that I was doing was not for ODM or for Jason or Joshua in the kitchen. I started working for God. I said, if I'm going to be anything, a part of his kingdom, a part of his plan, then I have to live like if I'm doing everything unto him. And I did that, man. And people would question me, why are you working so hard, man? And I mopped the floor in there maybe 3 times a day, and they made a joke. They said, man, you're going to kill yourself mopping, man. And it became like a thing here that David Sanchez, he mopped the hell out of that floor. He's always mopping. And I would tell, man, I said, I'm doing this because I owe this to my Father in heaven, man. I've lived and wasted so many years, and now that he's giving me a break, I'm going to give him the same energy and the same mindset, the attitude that I used out there on the street. I'm going to give it to him 100%, man. And I'm not going to cut him short, and I'm not going to cut myself short. Because it's not only about me. I found out that, because of the stories and the testimonies, that when these men began to get changed and the transformation, their families started getting blessed, and it affected a whole lot of people, and it wasn't only about me or them. So I said, I'm doing this for my family, man. My kids, they deserve this. My mother, if she's still alive, she deserves to see that there is a God who can make some changes if we let him. And I'm just letting him. have his way. And he began, slowly the things began to turn around. My attitude, how I talked to people, how I viewed people in the program, because I was a little edgy and upset because people were acting a fool, and I thought, they should be better than that. But then I realized that, what, we're all sick and we need help, man. Some of us are at a level and some of us are not. We're at different levels and different places in our walk. So I began to just understand that and accept people for where they are and love them like that and treat them with respect regardless of how they were living. But I learned that while being here. It wasn't always like that. I'll tell you in a heartbeat, how I felt and what I thought about you. And all of that began to change, progressively during, after months of being here and listening to the information and going through the classes. And it's been a good experience because I get along with a lot of people now, and I understand them, and we're able to talk, and I'm able to help people out to see things from a different perspective, and when they couldn't even see it, and I've had a lot of time to share with some of the older men and the younger, just that my story and my experience and the hope that I have, and that for them not to give up and to let God have His way. It's ODM doesn't have a magic potion or a pill they give you, but the instruction and all the classes, everything they offer, from the counseling and people that come in, the volunteers, the staff working upstairs, Miss Brooks doing her thing. I said all of that's part of the solution, to getting sober and starting to live healthy, and coping with life, with the skills that they give us so that we don't get in trouble and go back and do the things we were doing and that caused us pain, and then you destroyed everything that we had.
So you just graduated in May.
Yes, sir.
And now you got here because of probation, right?
Yes.
But now you're actually a part of the staff working
Right.
overnight security.
Yes, sir.
I mean, how does that sound to you?
Man, to me, it sounds like only God could do it, because when I came here, like I said, my attitude was to get in and get out. I never thought I would be employed by the Open Door Mission. It wasn't something I thought about, something I hoped for. And I think because of the attitude of my heart and my, the way I was working, and doing what I did, not as unto the place, but to God, that He opened the door and gave me opportunity. It's not coincidental that the place is called Open Door Mission, and God just opened this door for me and let me in, and I'm grateful for that. And it was like a overwhelming good thing that there's more to come as I continue to practice what I'm being taught here, what I was taught here, using the tools and staying connected to God and through prayer and reading and allowing Him to unfold the plans that He has for me. And I think this was part of His plan, and I wasn't aware of it when I got here. So I'm grateful and I'm thankful for it.
What would you say, through it all, what's the most valuable lesson that you've learned?
The most valuable lesson here for me is just the experience itself, because you come from a lifestyle that deep down that it's wrong, and they just have a way of bringing about all the good that's inside of you, and how to bring it out, and if we listen to the instruction and we follow the suggestions, it works.